All right, buckle up, everybody. We're diving deep into 2025 prophecies today.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. So we've got Evangelist, Godstime, Adah Prophecies 2025, John Chai Prophecies for 2025, Peter John Gabriel Prophecies 2025, and Wiseman Daniel Prophecy for the year 2025. A lot of 2025 going on.
Definitely seems to be a hot topic.
Yeah, and you mentioned wanting to start with Wiseman Daniel?
Yes, I'm very curious about his.
Right, so let's do that. Let's kick things off with Wiseman Daniel, and then we'll weave in the other prophets as we go, kind of see how it all connects,
Sure.
Paint a picture of 2025.
I like it. A prophetic tapestry.
Exactly. Okay, so Wiseman Daniel, he seems to be really focused on this blend of material and spiritual stuff.
Like a holistic view.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have his full bio or anything, but just from his prophecies, you can tell he's thinking about everything: economics, politics, even natural disasters. He's trying to give us this, this big picture view of what might be coming our way.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to shy away from the tough stuff.
No, not at all. He's like, okay, get ready for some economic hardship. He specifically mentions the U.S. dollar getting super strong.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and how that could really mess with other currencies. And then he also talks about fuel scarcity, like a major shortage.
Wow.
Yeah, and he thinks Nigeria and Ghana are going to be hit particularly hard.
So there are some regional specifics in there too?
Yeah, definitely. And he seems to connect this economic stuff to political unrest too.
Oh, how so?
Or he talks about big players in Nigerian political parties falling from grace.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he doesn't name names or anything, but it's pretty clear that he thinks there's going to be some major shakeups.
Yeah, I mean, if you have economic instability, that's often a breeding ground for...
Exactly. And it's not just Nigeria. He also mentions unrest in Mozambique.
Oh, real?
Yeah, maybe connected to the, economic struggles he's predicting. It's a lot.
It is a lot. But what's interesting is that he also brings in the spiritual dimension.
Oh, right.
Even amidst all this potential chaos, he sees ministers falling from grace, but also God, empowering genuine individuals and offering divine help to those who are struggling.
It's like a reminder that even when things are tough, there's still hope. Right?
Yeah, and maybe even a spiritual resurgence or awakening. It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely adds another layer to his prophecies.
Okay, so we've got Wiseman Daniel's take. Now let's bring in Apostle John Chi. He's our second prophet, right?
Yeah.
And his predictions, they kind of echo some of the stuff Wiseman Daniel was talking about, but he also brings his own unique perspective.
Right. Like two sides of the same coin, maybe?
Yeah, good way to put it. One thing that really jumps out is that they both seem concerned about the health of prominent figures.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Wiseman Daniel sort of alluded to health challenges for, some American political figure. But John Chi, he actually names Donald Trump.
Whoa.
Yeah, and predicts another assassination attempt on his life.
Oh, wow. That's
stark stuff. And then he mentions an unnamed African president facing health issues, too.
Which kind of aligns with Wiseman Daniel's worries about, leadership in the region.
Yeah, for sure. It's like they're both sensing this potential vulnerability at the top.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, right? Could that lead to even more instability, especially if it's happening alongside all the economic and political turmoil they're predicting?
Absolutely. It's definitely a possibility worth considering. And they both highlight the potential for political unrest, too, especially in Nigeria. But John Chi specifically links it to the economic hardship we talked about earlier.
Oh, how so?
He sees these massive protests fueled by, people struggling to make ends meet, and he's worried they could spiral out of control.
So it's all these different threads coming together: economic hardship, political instability, and then maybe even health crises among leaders. It's a pretty unsettling picture.
It is. But then John Chi throws in something totally new, something Wiseman Daniel didn't mention at all. He's got this prophecy about dangerous animal vaccines in Africa. Yeah, he claims these vaccines could have really bad effects on humans who eat the vaccinated animals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He even calls out the departments of health in African countries specifically, urging them to be super careful with foreign vaccines.
That's a very specific warning.
Yeah, it is. It's even though we see these overlapping themes, economics, politics, health, each prophet also brings their own, unique puzzle pieces to the table.
Yeah. Okay, before we move on to Peter John Gabriel and Evangelist, Godstime, Adah, let me just ask, out of everything we've talked about so far, Wiseman Daniel, John Chi, what's sticking with you? What feels most, impactful or maybe even a little bit scary?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think for me. It's interesting you asked that because I was just thinking about how these prophecies, while they're all different, they paint this really complex picture of what 2025 could look like.
Right, like a puzzle with all these different pieces.
Exactly. And you know what else adds another layer? Donald Trump. All 4 prophets actually mention him.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Like he just keeps popping up in these glimpses of the future.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, we already talked about John Chi's prophecy about an assassination attempt, which is obviously pretty dark.
Yeah, really heavy stuff. But then Peter John Gabriel comes in with this completely different take. He's saying Trump will actually become the most powerful president in the world.
Whoa. Okay, that's a twist.
Yeah, a real power move, apparently.
Mm.
And then we've got Godstime Adah. He throws his own little spin on it. But he also sees Trump facing some serious pushback, like tough times ahead, because Adah says he's standing against the works of darkness. It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, that's for sure. Talk about a mixed bag of predictions.
Right, so Trump's definitely a wild card in all of this. These prophets, well, they really didn't hold back,
Not at all.
They jumped into everything from global politics to, well, the future of our belief systems even.
It's amazing how much their predictions actually kind of intersect, especially when it comes to this theme of global unrest.
Oh, yeah, it's woven through all their prophecies, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's almost like, I don't know, like this feeling of tension, like something's bubbling under the surface, ready to erupt.
Absolutely. And that tension, it really plays out when they talk about political upheaval. It seems like no corner of the world is safe, even violence, according to these prophecies.
Yeah, like Apostle John Chi. I mean, he's known for his bold predictions, let's be honest, sometimes controversial.
Right.
But he's very specific. He foresees a political uprising in Ivory Coast. He even goes so far as to mention potential bloodshed. That's a little concerning.
It is. And it's not just isolated incidents. Evangelist Godstime Adah predicts protests in Kenya.
Right.
And he says they're going to escalate.
Really?
Yeah, to new, more tactical levels. He says it's because of a weakness in the leadership there.
So it's almost like people are losing faith in their government's ability to deal with things, to handle things.
Exactly.
He even describes a future social figure in Nigeria, somebody who's going to lead this massive protest.
Really?
It's interesting. He says this person isn't even involved in politics right now.
Oh, wow.
But they've got this strong social media presence, and they're already helping people in need.
Interesting.
It's like he's describing someone who could become really powerful, a real voice for the people, driven by all this discontent.
It's fascinating. And it's not just in Africa either. Wiseman Daniel, who really focuses on those spiritual matters and how they impact the world, he predicts unrest in Mozambique.
Really?
Yeah. He urges the government to talk to the youth, to actually have a dialogue, to prevent things from getting worse.
So are we seeing a global trend here?
Maybe.
Are people just, I don't know, starting to view power structures differently? What are they expecting from their leaders?
That is the question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It makes you think, especially when you consider what they're saying about the economy.
Yeah.
Because, well, those predictions, they're not all sunshine and rainbows.
No, not at all.
Not at all. We're talking challenges. We're talking crises. Even warnings about specific banks.
It's really attention-grabbing. Like Evangelist Adah, he likes to give practical advice in his prophecies.
Oh, yeah. He's very practical.
He actually warns about a global banking crisis. He even mentions 2 Nigerian banks that are facing internal issues. He actually suggests diversifying our banking resources just in case.
Wow. You don't hear that every day.
No, you don't. And what's interesting is that Apostle Peter John Gabriel, he usually focuses on these big global events, high-profile people. He also predicts problems for 2 Nigerian banks.
So they both see trouble in that sector.
I know. It makes you wonder, right? Are they tapping into the same information? Are they both just sensing this weakness in the system, even if they don't identify the exact same root cause?
Right. It's really interesting.
And it's not just banking. Wiseman Daniel, he predicts fuel scarcity in Nigeria. He says it'll be so bad that filling stations are going to have to close down.
Wow. And on top of all those struggles, within certain economies, we also have Adah predicting that the U.S. dollar is going to keep rising.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and he thinks that's going to impact other currencies, like the naira, the euro, the pound. So it could be this combination of internal and external pressures.
Creating this perfect storm.
Exactly.
Of economic uncertainty. It's like scary to think about how connected our global economies really are. It's like one domino falls and
It all ripples.
the whole world feels it. It makes you think, how will this impact me? You know, what choices should I be making? Should I be preparing for some kind of, economic turbulence? These prophecies, they really make you think about your financial security, don't they? Like, what steps can we take to be a little bit more resilient, just in case things get a little rocky?
Definitely. And speaking of uncertainty, we can't forget those predictions about natural disasters.
Oh, yeah.
And environmental concerns.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking volcanic eruptions and global flooding.
It's intense.
Heat waves so bad they could disrupt communication systems.
Yeah. Peter John Gabriel, he actually predicts both a volcanic eruption and global flooding.
Together.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to ignore that kind of combination,
It's a lot.
In Adah, he predicts this heat wave. He doesn't say where, but he says it's going to be so severe that it will impact communication systems.
That's really scary when you think about how much we rely on technology these days.
I know. It makes you realize how vulnerable we are to disruptions, especially as we're seeing, climate change affecting weather patterns all over the world.
Absolutely. You know what I find really intriguing is that some of these predictions, they connect natural disasters to things we're doing, human actions,
Yeah.
even spiritual matters.
It's like Adah, he believes that if we neglect rural areas in Europe, it could actually lead to devastating floods in major cities.
It's almost like there's this connection between how we treat the environment and the consequences we might face.
Yeah, it's pretty sobering.
And then Wiseman Daniel, he takes it even further. He attributes a natural disaster in an unnamed Asian country to the worship of gods and mermaid spirits.
Really?
Yeah. He doesn't say how they're connected, but it makes you wonder how different belief systems, view our relationship with nature.
It's fascinating. It's like these prophecies blend natural events, human choices, and spiritual beliefs.
They do. It makes you wonder if these are isolated incidents
Yeah.
or part of this bigger pattern
Right, connected to climate change or something.
and our impact on the planet.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
Yeah.
But, exploring these prophecies and understanding the beliefs behind them, it can help us see how different cultures interpret these challenges.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that there's always more than meets the eye.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we need to dig a little deeper,
For sure.
to really understand what's going on. But before we get too caught up in all this potential global upheaval, let's talk about the human element, because several prophets have expressed concerns about the health of specific people, and some even talk about a new pandemic.
Yeah, it's interesting. John Chi predicts a health challenge for an African president. We don't know which one.
Oh.
And also a prominent person from South Africa. He doesn't say what's wrong with them, but it does make you think about potential disruptions, in
Yeah.
leadership and stability in those countries.
Yeah. And Peter John Gabriel, he calls for prayers for Bishop T.D. Jakes and the Cameroonian president, Paul Biya.
Right.
He predicts health struggles for both of them.
It just reminds you that even the most powerful people are still vulnerable,
Yeah.
and their health can really impact things on a global scale.
I know. It makes you think about the people behind those positions, remember their humanity.
Absolutely.
But perhaps the most alarming prediction comes from Evangelist Adah.
What's that?
He foresees this disease, and it can kill within 24 hours. He really emphasizes the importance of spiritual strength for survival.
And Peter John Gabriel, he adds to that with his prediction of a new pandemic.
Oh, gosh. He doesn't go into detail, but after everything we've been through in recent years, it's definitely a little unsettling.
Yeah, definitely.
What Adah describes is particularly chilling.
What does he say?
He says it affects the brain, this disease, causes symptoms similar to drug use.
Oh.
It's a stark reminder that new pathogens can emerge, and, responding to these rapidly evolving health threats is a real challenge.
It really is. It shows how important it is to keep investing in global health.
Yeah.
Making sure our scientific research is strong.
Yeah.
And that we collaborate internationally. We need to be ready to tackle these potential pandemics before they get out of control.
Absolutely. Early detection.
Yeah.
Coordinated global action.
Exactly.
That's key. But amidst all these predictions of, turmoil, there's a glimmer of hope, too.
Oh, good.
Many prophets talk about both spiritual decline and a potential revival, like maybe a profound transformation is on the horizon.
Interesting. It's like a juxtaposition. On one hand, you have John Chi saying we need more unity within the Christian church to combat, these negative spiritual influences. He feels like there's this growing division, and it could make people more susceptible to manipulation.
Makes sense. And then you have Peter, John, Gabriel predicting this supernatural move of God, a revival of fire and the rise of young ministers.
So it's like he's seeing a counter movement.
Yeah, like this surge of spiritual energy, challenging the old ways, bringing fresh perspectives. And Adah seems to agree. He predicts a powerful end-time revival with a focus on young people and a return to, biblical practices. He even suggests that this might be the last revival before the end times. He urges people to prepare for the return of Christ.
Wow. That's a bold statement.
It is. And Wiseman Daniel, who tends to be a little more cautious, more measured, he offers a more balanced view. He acknowledges the possibility of revival, but he also sees a decline in the spiritual standing of some ministers.
So he's urging caution.
Yeah, don't just blindly follow. Be discerning about spiritual leadership. He talks about Jesus bestowing golden keys upon genuine ministers in Africa, symbolizing greater responsibility and power. It's a powerful image, right? Maybe suggesting a shift in spiritual authority to those who demonstrate true faith and integrity.
That's a fascinating contrast.
Yeah.
Decline and potential revival.
It really makes you think about the state of faith in the world today.
It does.
Are we headed for more fragmentation? Or could we be on the verge of a spiritual awakening?
It's complex. It's like a tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what we're seeing is both decline and renewal happening at the same time, like a sifting process where people are reevaluating what they believe, searching for something deeper, something more authentic.
And how will that impact individuals and communities? Will it lead to more division? Or could it actually bring a renewed sense of unity and purpose? These are questions that will unfold in the years to come, I think.
Definitely. And, these are just a few of the big themes that emerged from these 2025 prophecies. We still have a whole bunch of specific predictions to explore.
Oh, yeah. From assassination attempts and terrorist attacks to celebrity scandals and unexpected political shakeups. The year 2025 is shaping up to be anything but ordinary, according to these prophets.
Absolutely. If you thought 2024 was a wild ride, well,
buckle up.
We're just getting started. It's like they scanned the globe and zeroed in on those, figures and events that could be really significant. And some of those figures are pretty prominent. World leaders, even.
I was going to say, I noticed some big names popping up.
Like Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, it's hard to miss them.
They're in the spotlight.
Apostle John Chi, he doesn't mince words, He just comes right out and predicts an assassination attempt on Donald Trump.
Wow. Does he say anything more?
Not really about the details. But he does assure us that God will protect him.
Interesting. That divine protection thing comes up again.
It does, doesn't it?
And it's not just Trump either. Peter, John, Gabriel, and Evangelist Godstime, Adah, they both predict an attempt on Putin's life too.
That is striking. Multiple sources, different styles, different approaches, but...
Same prediction.
Yeah. It really makes you think, are they picking up on the same information? Or are they sensing a similar vulnerability?
Maybe.
And John Chi, he doesn't stop there.
No.
He also predicts terrorist attacks in the USA, urges Homeland Security to be on high alert.
It's a reminder that, the threat of terrorism, it's still there. We can't get complacent. We need to be vigilant, prepared. These prophecies are kind of like a call to action.
Yeah, be proactive, address those potential threats. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. Peter, John, Gabriel, he actually predicts some growth for South Africa's GDP.
Well, that's good. A little bright spot, amidst all the economic warnings. It shows that things might be volatile, but there's still opportunity. The future, it's never totally predictable, right?
Absolutely. There's always room for surprises. And Gabriel, he doesn't just focus on those big economic trends. He also mentions a fire in a government facility and some high-profile people leaving, departing. Doesn't say who or where, but it's like he's dropping these hints.
Yeah, like we should be watching for these little events.
Yeah.
It makes it feel kind of mysterious, like we're all part of this unfolding story. We just don't know the ending yet.
And then there's his advice to Zelensky. He says he should end the war with Russia.
For peace.
Yeah. Doesn't say how that would happen, but it does suggest, a possible resolution to a conflict that's impacted everything.
There's hope there. It's a reminder that even the most difficult conflicts can find a path to peace. Eventually.
Gabriel also predicts some, let's call them interesting social trends.
Okay.
Exposure of celebrities, health challenges for the UK royal family. It sounds a bit like tabloid stuff, but it does make you think.
Yeah, it's that fascination we have with, public figures. It reminds us that even people who seem to have it all, they're still human.
With the same vulnerabilities as the rest of us. On a more serious note, he also predicts delayed peace treaties in the Middle East. So tensions, those are likely to continue.
It shows just how complex those historical and political dynamics are.
Yeah.
We can't expect easy solutions. It takes time, effort.
Absolutely. And Gabriel's predictions, they go beyond specific regions or events. He also talks about inflation in the U.S. stemming from past government spending. It's like a reminder that those economic policies, they can have a long-lasting impact. We have to consider the consequences,
Long-term thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he doesn't just talk about governments and leaders.
Well,
he even delves into specific industries. Like Boeing, he predicts they'll face some criticism and restructuring because of problems with their aircraft.
interesting. It's like no sector is off limits.
I know, right?
There's this heightened scrutiny, across the board.
Yeah.
Governments, finance, technology, transportation, transparency, and ethics, those are going to be even more important.
It's like these prophets are holding up a mirror to society saying, hey, look at yourselves. What do you value? What's important?
And Gabriel just keeps going, with his predictions. He talks about security instability in Nigeria, sluggish growth for the Chinese economy, even potential losses for the Australian Prime Minister and the German Chancellor.
Wow. It's like a global political tour, hitting all the potential trouble spots, power shifts, vulnerabilities, nothing set in stone.
Right. And then, just when you think he's covered it all, he throws in these curveballs. Widespread acceptance of AI, an explosion in January 2025, and unity talks among Arab nations.
An explosion! That's a little cryptic.
Makes you wonder what he means. Where? What kind? It keeps you guessing. But I think it shows that the future is full of surprises, good and bad.
And he doesn't just focus on the big names on the world stage. He also predicts challenges for the European Central Bank, a tough economy in Europe, potential protests, even the resignation of a top European official.
It sounds like Europe might be in for a rough ride.
Yeah, and those predictions about, protests, dissatisfaction with leadership, they echo what we've been hearing about other parts of the world.
It's like this underlying unrest, bubbling up everywhere.
Exactly.
But he doesn't stop there. He talks about a major threat in space, disasters and food shortages in the Caribbean, even armed people invading government buildings leading to casualties.
Those are some intense predictions.
The stakes are getting higher. It's a world facing all these challenges, natural disasters, political instability, threats from technology, social unrest.
And to top it off, he also predicts global protests, investigations into the Biden administration, rejoicing among followers of Prophet T.B. Joshua, potential losses for Justin Trudeau, and even attacks on Nigerian politicians and their families.
Wow, it's a whirlwind. But there are some good things too, right? Glimmers of hope.
He does, yeah. He predicts eventual peace between Ukraine and Russia, a global heat wave. And this is the big one, miracles and answered prayers for God's children.
That's nice to hear, a message of hope and faith. It's a reminder that even when things are tough, there's always room for, divine intervention. It's about resilience.
And it's not just Peter John Gabriel who offers a glimpse into the coming year. Wiseman Daniel, he focuses a lot on spirituality and world events,
Yeah, what does he say?
He warns about challenges for the new president of Ghana, says his faith will be tested. It's a reminder that leadership comes with burdens, Even people with strong beliefs, they'll still face tough choices and obstacles.
True.
And he also mentions health concerns for someone important in U.S. politics. Doesn't say who, but hints that it could disrupt things.
Adds a bit of suspense, doesn't it? Makes you wonder who he means, how it might affect things.
Definitely. And Daniel, he doesn't shy away from tragedies. He predicts a plane crash, train derailments in Africa and Asia, research that goes against human genes, and trouble for a traditional ruler in Africa. Even suggests a possible assassination attempt.
It's a lot to take in. Accidents, disasters, political intrigue, scientific advancements with, potential dangers. It's a reminder that we never really know what the future holds. Things can change in an instant.
Absolutely. We have to appreciate the present moment, but also acknowledge, how fragile life can be. And then there's Evangelist Godstime Adah. He likes to give practical advice.
Yeah, I like that about him. What does he say?
Well, he predicts robots taking over human jobs.
Wow. With all the AI stuff happening, it doesn't seem that far-fetched, does it?
I know. It's unsettling to think about the impact on jobs, on the economy.
Yeah. It makes you think, how do we adapt? What kind of education and training will we need? And what about the ethics of it all? We have to make sure AI is used responsibly.
Absolutely. It's not just about progress, it's about fairness.
Right.
Adah also predicts the deaths of 2 religious leaders,
Oh.
one in Nigeria and one in America. It makes you wonder who he's talking about, how their passing might affect things.
Yeah, it shows how leadership changes even within, those institutions that seem really traditional.
It's a constant cycle.
Exactly.
And then he predicts a rebranded terrorist group in Nigeria, suggesting that terrorism, that threat, it's not going away. It might even evolve.
So we have to stay vigilant, adaptable. Those groups are always finding new ways to operate.
I know, it's a constant game of, cat and mouse.
Mm.
And Adah, he doesn't just predict events, he gives advice. He urges the release of a prisoner who's fighting for his tribe in eastern Nigeria. He says dialogue and reconciliation are crucial.
So he's using his platform to advocate for action. Like, he's not just observing the future, he's trying to influence it, for the better.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, here's what I see, and here's what we can do to minimize the damage, to make things better.
I like that. He's not just sitting back, he's participating.
Exactly. He's speaking truth to power.
Calling for justice.
And Adah also raises concerns about people leaving agriculture, predicts food shortages in 2025. He even says prices in Nigeria will keep going up.
Wow.
He urges people to, invest in farming, become more self-sufficient. It's practical advice, but it also points to something bigger.
The importance of local food systems.
Yeah, and resilience, especially if things get, economically unstable. It's all connected. Food security, economics, social well-being. We can create resilience within our communities.
Empowering.
And he doesn't stop there. He throws in a few more, like a tragedy in Portugal and health problems for Nigeria's president. It's a lot.
A whirlwind of events. Specific, general, but all pointing to a year of change, upheaval. It's a lot to process, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to see how these prophets, they each have their own way of looking at things. They're offering these glimpses into, what might be.
It's amazing, isn't it? We've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
I know, it's like a whirlwind.
Yeah.
All these potential ups and downs for coming 25.
Yeah.
Political unrest, economic shifts, natural disasters, spiritual awakenings, even, assassinations.
Technological advancements. I mean, that's a lot to take in. What really stood out to you? Was there anything particularly thought-provoking or surprising, running through these prophecies?
The thing that keeps coming back to me is technology.
Oh, yeah.
And how it's just becoming more and more influential in our lives.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
Like Adah's prediction about robots taking over jobs, or Gabriel's mention of a threat in space. It feels like technology. It's this double-edged sword,
It really makes you think, are we handling this rapid advancement the right way? Are we prepared for the consequences? The good and the bad. It's like these prophets are saying, wake up, think about this now before it's too late.
Yeah, be proactive. Don't just let things happen. And it's not just about the physical, technological world either. There's this whole spiritual dimension too.
Oh, absolutely. All those predictions about spiritual decline, potential revival, it's like the world is wrestling with its beliefs, trying to figure out what really matters.
Right. Like we're at a crossroads. Do we cling to the old ways or do we embrace something new? It's a question we all have to answer. So as we head into 2025, let's remember that. We're not just along for the ride. We're all co-creating this thing, this future, and it's up to us to make it one that aligns with our values, our hopes.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe we'll even get to witness some of those mighty works firsthand. The potential is definitely there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the 2025 prophecies. It's been quite a journey, full of intrigue and some caution, but also like a surprising amount of hope.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a fascinating exploration.
I hope it's given everyone listening some food for thought. And remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together.
Well said.